All right. It looks like everything's working here at the Alex Herber's Control Center. So this is like being at NASA, mission control. Houston, we've got a problem. Not really. But hello, everybody. It's good to be with you, I suppose. Sort of see you. I can imagine I'm seeing you. Can't really see you. Just Chris and Alex. That's all I got. But that's pretty good. It's more people that I've seen outside of my wife than usual. So we're going to be getting into Mark 15, nearing the end of Mark. So this is a pretty cool passage. Um, we were hoping to have some videos, but we found out that YouTube doesn't like it when you show videos from real movies, even though these clips are on YouTube. That's the part I do not understand. So you can go see these clips of the Passion. I put the little links there, as well as if you just search on YouTube for Passion Pilate scene, it'll be the first one, or for Passion Barabbas scene, that'll be the first one. So I'd encourage you to go back and watch those. They're pretty good. Or actually, it'd be better just watch the whole Passion movie if you have never seen that, because it is really good movie on essentially the what led up to the crucifixion and the crucifixion of Christ. Mel Gibson did a good job there. So I did want to say too, if you during the teaching, if you got some comments or questions, please type them in instead of just waiting to the end, especially if you got something in the middle. So we have them, so we can answer them at the end and have a little discussion. That would be cool. Otherwise, why don't we start out with some prayer and we'll get into it. Well, Lord, I do thank you that we could get together, even though it is remote. But we're still your body. We still love you and want to get into your word. And we thank you that your word can speak through electrons and all that kind of stuff and can speak directly into our hearts. And so we just look forward to that. We thank you that you came into this world to meet us where we're at and to meet us with what we need, even though we didn't want you. But you love us that much that you went through the things you went through in order to die for us and to pay for our sins and to identify with us. And so I just praise you for that. I pray that we could get a better sense of that tonight as we go through this passage and just really come to appreciate you more and seek you more, Lord. So I just pray these things in your name. Okay. So I hope you're all getting this. I can't tell, but I'm going to get into this teaching. So we're calling this What's at the Heart of Rejecting Jesus? Because what we're going to talk about are people that reject Jesus, which, as we'll see, is pretty much everyone. So you probably fell into this category at one time or another. So if you remember, oops, that didn't work. Oh, wrong screen. They got 3 screens in front of me, and I was in the wrong one. Here we are. Bingo. So last week, we were talking about Jesus before the religious leaders. So here he was grabbed by these guys. He was taken into the chief priest's house in the middle of the night, which is something that was illegal and pretty cowardly. But they had this sort of secret trial for him and stuff. And, they are questioning him. Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? And Jesus said, eventually he said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And so, of course, when Jesus says, I am, which is God's name, in and of itself is saying, I am God. And of course, the religious leaders are going, that's blasphemy. You can't do that. And of course, then at that point, even though they brought all these false accusations, they just decided that's enough. And so they started the whole process now of taking him to trial, as we'll see. And so Jesus gets rejected by the religious leaders. He also, though, as we saw, was rejected by the disciples, especially Peter. So they all ran away from him. But Peter, who did follow Jesus, ended up denying Jesus 3 times while he's with the religious leaders. And in Mark 14, at the end of it, Jesus says, I do not know this man you're talking about, because these people kept coming up to him and saying, hey, aren't you one of the disciples? Aren't you one of the men from Galilee? And of course, he denied Christ 3 times, as Christ had predicted. And so Jesus was even rejected by his own people. And so what we're going to see today is that there's going to be 3 new groups of rejectors. Uh, and really, I think what Mark is doing is he's putting all of these people together in a row to try and show us that essentially everybody rejects Jesus. Everyone on some level is offended or put off by Jesus, or just doesn't want to deal with him. Even though everyone thinks that Jesus is a good teacher, a humanitarian, we just want to keep Jesus at an arm's length. Why is that? Well, I think we can get some insights into that as we go through this. We could see that we probably fit in or have fit into this, and sometimes we still fall into that. And this is so unfortunate because God actually wants to really relate with us in a cool way. So, our passage is going to be in Mark 15. So, we'll start out here in verse 1. As soon as it was morning, the chief priests had a meeting with the elders, scribes, and the whole Sanhedrin. After tying Jesus up, they led him away and handed him over to Pilate. So Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Okay, so this is first thing in the morning. Really, probably, again, a cowardly thing, trying to sneak him into Pilate. This is all of the religious leaders bringing him. Pontius Pilate is the governor of the Palestinian region for the Romans, so he's the head honcho, representing all of Rome in this case. And so you see that Pilate asks Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Mark actually doesn't go into too much detail on this interaction. It seems like a very short investigation. As we'll see, there's a little more to it than that. But this is the thing that Pilate's interested in, though, because they had a lot of accusations against Jesus about his claiming to tear down the temple and the fact that he's claiming to be God and the Messiah and all this kind of stuff. Pilate could care less about that stuff. But the one thing that does come up is that, are you saying you're the king of the Jews? Because that would sort of be a bad thing when it comes to Rome. Caesar's the king, so you can't go against Caesar. So this would be the one sort of accusation that Pilate would care about, although he doesn't give much credence to it, as we'll see. So we can see a little more of this conversation in John chapter 18. So here we see that Pilate enters again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus says, are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? And so that's an interesting response. So Jesus doesn't really answer the question directly, but he is kind of saying, do you really want to know? So it's really fascinating. Even though Jesus has now been persecuted up to this point, treated awfully, he's still very much in command and is interacting with Pilate in a way that is really compelling. And do you want to know the real answer, Pilate? That's what Jesus is saying to him. And I think this is what Jesus says to us too. He says, do you really want to get to know me? You don't have to, but if you want to, I will let you know. And so many of us today, there's a whole group of people now that some demographers call the nuns, who maybe are atheists, maybe not, but essentially they're just not interested. That's ultimately what defines them. And I think a lot of us fall into that category, and that's too bad, because God is saying, hey, I do want you to get to know me. In fact, I want to get to know you better and have a relationship with you. It's not wise to not want to get to know Christ. So they go on. Pilate says, I'm not a Jew, am I? Of course not. Your own nation and chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done? He just doesn't get it. Actually, I can see why. There's nothing that Jesus really did. But Jesus answers, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm. Therefore Pilate said to him, so you are a king. Jesus answered, you say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. Okay, so this is an interesting little interaction. Jesus says that my kingdom is not of this world. So Jesus ultimately does say, yes, I am a king, but it's of a different kingdom that is not of this world. Um, In fact, I came from out of this world, Jesus is saying. The truth ultimately has to come from outside. You're not going to find it here in this world. You actually have to be told what the truth is and have it revealed to you from some place outside of this world where Jesus came. So on the opposite of this, Pilate would actually be representing, in this case, the power of the world. He's representing Rome, and who is, the great power of the time. And he's the pinnacle, essentially representing the pinnacle of the world system, the power, the control, also the frailty that exists in the world as well. I think it's very interesting seeing the way the world is today, especially with this COVID pandemic going on. Because what you see is that we have incredible power and control on one level, but on the other hand, we don't. And there is this frailty to this world. There's this anxiety. There's this, just a real angst that goes on because we realize that we don't exactly know what we're doing or what's going on or, what the future holds and this kind of thing. And I think we're very much like Pilate was here. We're in need of truth. And the only way we're really going to get truth is if it's actually revealed to us from somebody who knows it and is truth. And that's what God is offering. Well, Pilate responds to this with a very famous verse. Pilate says to him, "What is truth?" Um, Actually, that needs to be said again. What is truth? An amazing statement because it really is, I think, at the heart of a lot of people's thoughts. It's the ultimate question in the universe. What is really true? It's a question that we cannot really even answer in and of ourselves because today the modern thinking is, well, truth comes from within. What your truth is to you, my truth is to me, this sort of a thing. But that's silly. There's no way that that is true. We've put ourselves at the center of the universe, and so we now have to discern truth on my own. We have to somehow come up with what is true to me. But in our hearts, we have to know that that's not real truth because I'm just this little peon guy and I'm going to be here today and gone tomorrow. And so we get confused. We get disheartened. We get alienated. We get isolated. We don't know what to do with ourselves. And that's sort of the current state of our society. It's all relative. And we cannot actually anchor ourselves to anything because we don't know what really is the truth when all we can do is look at ourselves. And so Jesus is saying, do you want to know the truth? Because I am the truth and the life, he says. Anyone comes to know me will come to know what that is and know the Father and experience eternity. And it's really important for us to actually turn to Christ in this way. Well, that was some of the interaction that Mark left out, but now we're going to go back to Mark 15. And so after this, there's accusations against Christ, of course, from the chief priests. And then Pilate questions him again. Are you not answering anything? Look how many things they are accusing you of. The Pharisees got all these kinds of things that are against Jesus, but Jesus still did not answer anything. So Pilate was amazed. So, Pilate, cares for Jesus. He knows that he's innocent. He knows that, these guys are just out to get him. And yet Jesus won't stand up for himself when he's accused. He'll talk to him about truth and where Pilate's at and this sort of thing, but he's not answering with regard to the accusations that the religious leaders are bringing against him. And so Pilate is in a dilemma here because he doesn't want to go through with what the religious leaders want, but he's got issues because these religious leaders have some leverage with him. For one thing, as we'll see, they're going to get the crowd stirred up. Another thing is that in John, actually, they lever the charge against Caesar that if you let this guy go, Jesus, who claims to be a king, then you're no friend of Caesar, they say in John 19:12. And this hits to home with Caesar because with Pilate because he is sort of under the microscope. There was this guy named Sejanus who was a good friend of Caesar's actually, who was in one of Caesar's main counselors, ended up being sort of in charge for a little while Caesar was away, ended up trying to take the government away from Caesar, which didn't go over well with Caesar and the army, ended up getting exposed and busted. And so he got killed, and all of his buddies now are all under scrutiny as well. And Pilate was a good buddy of Sejanus. This happened in 31 AD, a couple years before, when Jesus was about to be sent to the cross. So Pilate's in trouble with Caesar on some level, and to have an accusation go against him that he is now doing things that are against Caesar would not look good. So Pilate actually has to think for himself. And so when he comes to Jesus, he's got to consider that. Also, Pilate's wife had a bad dream about him. You could read that in Matthew 27:19. And she came to him the day before and said, don't have anything to do with this guy. Let him go. But, so Pilate has all this stuff sort of against him with regard to Jesus. But he has to look out for himself. Ultimately, he realizes that Jesus is somebody who's dangerous. He's talking about this truth stuff. He's probably like looking through Pilate. Pilate senses that he could see into his heart and that Pilate is afraid and is vulnerable and uncomfortable and exposed. And Pilate does not want to do anything with that. And so he just wants to get rid of this guy ultimately. And he's going to go through with whatever he's got to do in order for that to happen. And so I think Pilate's like a lot of people, where they view Jesus as dangerous, as somebody you really don't want to deal with. I can relate to this. Before I became a Christian, I was this way. I respected Jesus, but I knew that if I actually really dealt with what he was saying and what he was about, it was somehow going to affect my life. I was no longer going to be in control. Knew I was going to be in a very uncomfortable and exposed position. And I did not want to think about that. So I kept trying to push Jesus off for as long as I could, seeking distractions or doing whatever it was that I could to not have to let my mind consider the claims of Christ. And that's what a lot of us do. Thankfully, Jesus broke through. And I hope if you're in that position, you will give him the chance to actually break through there. Because ultimately, we can't just push Jesus to the side. Someday, we will have to we'll be face to face with Jesus, and he will, we'll have to deal with him then. And it's better to actually get to know him now than later. Well, finally, Pilate, moves on, and there was the festival. It was the time of Passover, and so it was Pilate's custom, it says, to release to the people a prisoner they requested. And there was one named Barabbas, who was in prison with rebels who had committed murder, not a great guy, during the rebellion. So he's an insurrectionist. This guy is like a rebel. He's against Rome, of all things. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do for them as was his custom. So the crowd ended up coming forward and wanting Barabbas to be released instead of Jesus. And so Pilate answered him, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews for you?" For he knew it was because of envy that the chief priests had handed him over. So all of this is being instigated by the chief priests. Pilate knows that these guys are envious and just trying to get rid of Jesus for no good reason, that Jesus is innocent and all this kind of stuff. And now the decision falls into the crowd's hands. So a giant crowd is outside the Praetorian there where Pilate was. And Pilate now wants to wash his hands of this whole mess. And so now the question is going to be, is what is the crowd going to do? And now the scene changes, and Chris Burka now comes into the scene. So Chris, the floor is yours.
Hello? Okay, cool. So yeah, what is this crowd gonna do? Let's find out. So this is Mark 15. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd so that he would release Barabbas to them instead. Pilate asked them again, "Then what do you want me to do with the one who you call the King of the Jews?" Again they shouted, "Crucify him!" Then Pilate said to them, "Why? What has he done wrong?" But they shouted again, "Crucify him!" all the more. Then, willing to gratify the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them, and after having Jesus flogged, he handed him over to be crucified. So the crowd chooses to release Barabbas and to crucify Jesus. And you can tell that Pilate is shocked by this. His question, why? Why? What has he done wrong? He did not expect this. And what is really fascinating here, this crowd. Just a week before, they were praising Jesus, leading him into Jerusalem in a parade, Palm Sunday. They were really excited that he was here in the city. And now there's this drastic change. Now they want to crucify him. Why this drastic change? What happened over this week? Um, what changed was that they realized Jesus wasn't going to give them what they wanted. The Jewish people wanted to be free from Roman rule. They wanted to rule themselves. So this Barabbas guy, uh, he's already been an insurrectionist. He's already tried to overthrow Rome. This guy is more in line with what they want, and Jesus is not. So the crowd rejects Jesus. And we do this too. We reject God when he doesn't give us what we want. When he's not in line with our plans, we throw him to the wayside. And the Jews planned to overthrow Rome. It didn't actually work. Just a few decades after this, in 70 AD, General Titus came in and leveled the temple and destroyed the city. This plan of theirs did not go well, and it ended in their own destruction. And when we follow our own plans, it usually ends in destruction as well. Um, I was thinking of a time when I just blatantly disregarded God, and it reminded me there was this girl I wanted to date. I did date her, but it was against all the advice that I was given. All the counsel said, "Don't date this girl." She wasn't a believer. She wasn't interested in the Lord, and I dated her anyways. And it left a lot of damage. Like I hurt her, and she hurt me. Um, I don't really know what she's doing right now, but I can't imagine that the pain has gone away. So our plans, they don't work. They don't end up the way we think they will. And what's really incredible about this crowd is that the creation is judging the creator. Jesus Christ created everybody in this crowd. He uh, he made all of them himself, and now that creation is saying, "Crucify him." This is a very humiliating thing, and I think it really shows how far God is willing to go because He loves us. This is not a thing that you would expect out of a bully God or a police officer God. And Jesus is willing to get tortured for this. So Pilate flogs Jesus, tortures him to try to sway the crowd. Um, but the crowd shouts away. They still want him crucified. And this event, I think, really exposes Pilate's heart. Just Jesus being here shows that Pilate is a coward and he's a people pleaser. He wasn't willing to stand up for justice. Um, Jesus was innocent, but he has been punished anyways. And it shows the people's heart. The people are saying, my way or the highway, or in this case, my way or you die. Um, this is really crazy. This is the heart of man is my way or get out. But let's keep going here. So verses 16 through 20. Then the soldiers led him away into the courtyard, that is, the headquarters, and called the whole company together. They dressed him in a purple robe, twisted together a crown of thorns, and put it on him. And they began to salute him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! They kept hitting him on the head with a reed and spitting on him. Getting down on their knees, they were paying him homage. When they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple robe and put his clothes back on him and led him out to crucify him. So these soldiers, these Roman soldiers, they didn't want to be in Israel. Israel was the backwater of the Roman Empire. This was the place you were assigned to if you got in trouble. You didn't want to be here. These soldiers would rather be at home with their families or on the front lines in Europe. They didn't want to be essentially on babysitting duty. So these soldiers, they are hardened and they're cynical about their situation. Um, and it's because of the people of Israel, the Jews. So when they see this king of the Jews, he represents everything that they hate. Um, so this mockery, they're kind of just taking advantage of the opportunity. This is a spontaneous thing. Um, so they take all their hate and rage out on Jesus. And this is all that they know how to do. They're so accustomed to their own cynicism that this is it. This is all that they can do. And our culture is like this. Um, if you look on the internet, on Facebook, Twitter, there are so many people that just mock Christianity, tear it down, um, really make fun of Jesus. This is what our culture is. We have a meme culture where we make fun of things and tear things down. And I think that this isn't common just to these soldiers or just our culture, but it's a heart issue that God talks about in Psalm chapter 2. So this is verses 1 through 3. Why are the nations so angry? Why do they waste their time with futile plans? The kings of the earth prepare for battle. The rulers plot together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Let us break their chains, they cry, and free ourselves from the slavery of God. The nations rage against God. People get mad at God when he doesn't do what we want. And we scheme, we kind of work around what God's doing to get what we want. We essentially say, screw you, God. I'm going to do what I want, and I'm not going to be a slave to you. I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm going to be free from you. And this is what these soldiers are like. They want nothing to do with the Lord. So we have a bunch of people, a bunch of different types of people, and they're triggered by Jesus. So I want to ask the question, who are you? Out of these four types of people that we've talked about, are you like the religious leaders who get offended by Jesus? They're offended because they think they're good enough, but Jesus says that they're not. Are you like Pilate, where you're threatened by Jesus, where you see him as a threat because of your own ambition? Uh, Jesus means that there's someone else out there who's more powerful and is actually in control. That's a threat to somebody who is worldly and ambitious. Are you like the crowd, where maybe you tried the God thing once and he didn't come through the way you wanted him to, so you just rejected him? Or are you like the soldiers, where you're cynical, you mock Jesus because of it? That's all you know how to do. Well, whichever category you fall into, probably more than one. I've fallen into more than one. Despite all this, I think this is really, really sweet. So, despite all this rejection, this is in Romans chapter 5. For while we were still helpless, at the appointed moment, Christ died for the ungodly. But God proves his own love for us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. For if, while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, then how much more, having been reconciled, will we be saved by his life? Despite all the rejection and all the hate, Jesus still goes through with this. He still loves us. We're helpless. We're sinners. We are enemies of God. And he does this because it's what we needed. This is the truth right here. Jesus went through this humiliation and this torture and eventually the crucifixion because it's what we need. He cares about us. So, if you're listening to this and you wouldn't consider yourself a follower of Christ, you need a substitute. Let's check out this verse. He made the one who did not know sin to be sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. You need a substitute, and Christ is that substitute. In the same way that he took on the punishment that Barabbas definitely deserved, he wants to take on the punishment that you deserve. We have to pay for our sins, but he wants to take that for you. And this is the only way to be right with God. The Bible is very clear that no amount of good works will make you right with God, but that Jesus Christ is the way to do this. Um, and if you are a follower of Christ, Jesus did this for you specifically. You know, JT, he did this for you specifically. Anna's story, you specifically. When he was going through this, he was thinking about each individual person. And when I take a step back and reflect on this, it humbles me a lot because I definitely don't deserve this. And I ignore God quite a bit, but he still loves me. He's never pushed me to the side like I have him. And it's a humbling thing. And it stirs up gratitude. Um, it's very, very sweet, very, very deep gratitude. And Jesus, he did this for us. This is an others focused thing that he's doing. Jesus is able to take this humiliation and this torture and this pain because he wants to see us redeemed. And our redemption, this is what it required, was him to go through this. This was the way to do this. Uh, Jesus didn't manufacture the strength to get through this from himself. He didn't just tough it out. He got his strength from the Father, from God. So if we as believers want to see other people redeemed, we need the Father's strength too. Philippians 4 makes this very clear. I'm able to do all things through him who strengthens me. It's not through me that strengthens me. It's not through um, video games that strengthens me. It's through God, through him that strengthens me. We can take on whatever humiliation or rejection or pain comes our way if we have the Father's strength. So I think that's cool. That's all we had prepared. So I guess we can take questions now. Snap, 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 snap. The other headphones are right there. All right, so you know, type in those questions. We'll give you some time to actually type them out. This guy, okay. Oh,
Uh, hello, everybody. Oh,
uh,
there I am.
Greg, do you want the tall chair? Or are you okay?
This is no, I don't want the tall chair because I'm taller than you. There you go. So I can go this maybe, or we can
Okay. Oh, there we go. That'll be good.
all right. What? Does this stay where you want it to, Alex? All right. That's almost right. Okay, so I gotta stay like this. Nate's saying something.
Let's see. Oh, we're doing a
Okay.
thing. Okay, so now we can hear Greg, right?
Oh, I've been talking this whole time and you couldn't hear me? Damn. What did Nate ask? I recently was like the crowd, bitter at God for not giving me what I want. I wanted God to change me to be a certain way, and I failed to see that God was instead giving what I needed. God is right. Correct. No, I think that's really true. I think that's something that God often allows us to go through things, partly because, that's what's going to happen if we think something that's off base and this sort of thing, but also that we realize that we need God
hmm
and that He wants to show us something better. But we're not going to learn that unless we're going to seek Him and listen to Him. So that's a good point.
Yeah, there is something to be said about being on God's page where we might want to work on a particular thing right now, but God in his wisdom says, "No, let's work on this first. This will be better."
Hmm. Surely somebody else has a question or a comment, something to share. The
Do do do
moment of
do.
silence.
Dun dun dun.
Silence is deafening, just like Jesus, silent before Pilate. Pilate had that dilemma. Now we're in a big dilemma because it's silent.
Oh,
Oh, Blood Rose. Who is Blood Rose?
Megan Savage.
Natasha or Megan? Well, at any rate, there's a Kahoot game after the teaching starting around 9:30. We'll post the link around that time. Okay.
Whoever this Blood Rose 1996 person is, will post a link.
Oh, thank you, Blood Rose. Frankie. Y'all did a good job. I love Chris, how you brought up Second Core 521. It is really humbling to think about. What do you have to say about that, Chris?
I agree. Um, it is a humbling thing to know that somebody else has done the work for us. Um, Especially somebody like me who uh, tends to work really hard at things. Uh, it's humbling to know that I can't do this, that it's all on God.
Yeah. Blood Rose is back again. 3 times. Do you think Pilate had actually fear of the Lord? Like for what Jesus had done? I do think that Pilate he was intimidated by Christ because when Christ was interacting with them in John 18, it's like he was exposed, and Pilate knew he was innocent. And there is a code of ethics in Rome that there's supposed to be justice. So at the very least, he knows that he's dealing with somebody that should be set free, but ultimately he's not going to do it. Um, and his wife having that bad dream and stuff, premonition, that was interesting. So I do think that Pilate he's very uncomfortable with the whole scene, and but then again, he had to look out for himself. What did Brandon say? Probably just an academic question, but I've always wondered what ultimately became of Pilate and Barabbas after the events of the crucifixion. Are there any resources you know of that talk about it? No, I don't, and I'm pretty sure, I thought I heard it or read it somewhere, that you don't hear much about Pilate after this. So he goes down in infamy as being the guy that he's actually in, the Apostles' Creed and stuff like that. So it's like, he's famous for actually handing Christ over to be crucified.
Yeah, actually, I know some stuff
Oh, there
on
you go,
this.
Chris.
So we don't know anything definitive about either of them. However, it was actually believed for hundreds of years that Pilate was just a made-up character in Scripture. because there was no
Ah.
archaeological evidence of his existence. But in either, I think it was the early 1900s, a guy named Sir William Ramsay set out to actually prove this. So he did a bunch of archaeological digs in Jerusalem and Israel, and on the coast of the Mediterranean, Caesarea Maritima, they found a tablet with his name carved in it. Um, and that's the primary extra biblical evidence we have of Pilate's existence is a stone tablet. I took pictures of it when I was in Israel.
Hmm.
Um, so we don't really know what happened to him after. I don't know if anything else has been found since then. And Barabbas, no idea.
Yep, no idea. Alex Herbers, who's right here,
Hello,
asks,
Alex.
which of the types do you most tend towards, Greg? The crowd, the soldiers, one of the others? I tend towards Pilate, Alex, because I just don't want to deal with somebody who can see through me. So I'd rather run away and somehow not be in their presence. So that's pretty much that's who I identified most with in this story. What about you, Chris?
I identify most with the crowd. Um, I have plans. I like to do things and have a goal in mind. And when God kind of pushes me another direction, I initially don't really like that. So I fall into the crowd most often where I just ignore God.
Jordan Yorger. Second Core 521 can be humbling, but also extremely
Relieving.
relieving, not revealing. If you are willing to give up some control, it can be really comforting to know that you don't got it and it is too much to handle. God will come through, maybe not how you thought, but he will come through. Usually it's better than what I thought. So that's sweet. Amen to that.
Very true. Oh, yes.
Now, I think 2 Corinthians 25:21 is one of the most amazing verses in the Bible. It's the old switcheroo. He who knew no sin, Jesus, became sin for us so that we might become the righteousness of God. It's the ultimate picture of the need for a sacrifice and how God actually became the sacrifice for us, which is really cool. Anything else?
The sound of silence.
Well, thank you for asking us questions. That was good.
Yes, very cool.
You want to close this in prayer, Chris?
Sure.
All right.
Well, Lord, thank you that you've gotten this technology to work for us. This is really sweet. Um, and I just want to thank you for um, being our substitute and taking on this thing that we are in no way prepared to actually do. Um, so thank you for that. Thank you for sacrificing yourself for us. I pray that we can be thinking about this throughout the week and really considering what it means uh, for in our daily lives to follow you and to not reject you, to follow your lead.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. So that's it for now. We'll be playing the Kahoot game pretty soon, and look forward to having home church next week.
Woo,
Same bat time.
woo.
We'll see y'all.
Peace.